Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another Dokkan Battle animation analysis video. And ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be taking a look at arguably the biggest letdown of the year, at least for me personally. And not in the terms of the content that we're going to be looking at, but what's missing because of the content that we're looking at. Of course, we're looking at the Super Saiyan Hercule support memory. Apparently Hercule, because I guess I misspelled that when I was just putting this as an unlisted video to do this video. Apologies on that one, but maybe I'm calling him Nerdcule, bro, because what a nerd pretending to be a Super Saiyan. He's just like the rest of us, for real, for real. But obviously, if you are familiar, right, this was the first time that Dokkan has not done a brand new April Fool's unit, and obviously everybody was thinking that they were going to drop one because, of course, we had the Super Saiyan Hercule statue, and not to mention, right, obviously it seemed likely with all of the Hercule stuff for Dokkan City. And no, instead of giving us a Super Saiyan Hercule unit, we instead got a Super Saiyan Hercule support memory. So I figured because we don't have the actual unit to take a look at, we may as well take a look at the support memory. And I did pull up the clip on YouTube, which of course I will link in the description below. By the way, I'm sorry if my voice is cracking. Just did a very long stream over on the unboxing channel. Definitely go check it out if you're interested in that type of thing. And my voice is cooked right now, but I wanted to get this video out before tomorrow, so I apologize about that. But regardless, though, I did pull up the clip so we could at least do a little bit of comparison. Now, I will say the interesting thing about this support memory, right, is for one, right, I'm glad that at least he's represented in the game somehow. It still kind of really stinks, to be honest with you, the fact that we didn't actually get him as a proper unit, considering people have wanted him in the game for so long now. He has definitely been one of the most highly requested, like, April Fool's cards of all time, at least as far as I could remember. Obviously, just being such a funny moment from Dragon Ball Super, I think it would have made for a fantastic super attack, and it is kind of unfortunate that he's gotten relegated to this. Now, the interesting thing, though, is that, of course, the animation itself for the support memory, which we're about to take a look at, is definitely not too bad, right? I think it's actually pretty decent. It definitely, like, is a support memory animation for sure, where it's, like, not too detailed and not too crazy, but it's certainly not bad for what it is. And the interesting thing is, as we'll kind of look through as we go through this, after looking at the support memory in full, there are still a lot of parts of this where Hercule is in quote-unquote Super Saiyan fighting Beerus, that they could absolutely still make a card out of this if they really wanted to. So let's go ahead and obviously analyze here. Of course, I know this is going to be a little bit of a shorter video because, of course, we're only looking at 15 seconds of footage here. But so, of course, to start off, we have Hercule talking to the crowd, right? Obviously describing the situation as he was, you know, gassing himself up, pretending that he was able to go Super Saiyan. The interesting thing is, by the way, they obviously cut in the support memory of, like, Hercule, you know, describing it, and it's basically like the cut is him remembering the scene. The interesting thing is when he talks about it in the original, like, shot, it is like kind of a similar thing, right? He's standing there and they basically just cut to the scene. So it's interesting that for some of the stuff, Dokkan kind of like zoomed in on it, right? Like obviously zooming into his face. There are moments in here where Hercule is definitely like closer up to the camera, right? Like especially here. And ironically enough, what's funny to even like notice is that he doesn't even have a microphone in his hand. But in the Dokkan version, they decided to add in a microphone, which I think is kind of interesting. I mean, I think it works a little bit more for, like, the context of what's happening here. I mean, obviously, in the original scene, Hercule's just kind of talking to a crowd of people. So this is definitely not a bad decision, right? And I think for, obviously, the fact that you don't really, like, see the crowd of people, I think it kind of makes a little bit more sense for him to have a microphone in the scene in the context of the support memory. But yeah, so we obviously have him stance up against Beerus. The Super Saiyan transformation is nothing too crazy when it comes down to it, right? It is basically just you have him, you know, like obviously in this pose, and then they slowly transition him into here, right? Obviously doing a couple pose changes. The aura begins to flare up. They have an impact frame, and then he has the yellow hair, right? Which they obviously have him powering up. And then, of course, they cut to the iconic shot of Super Saiyan Hercule, which looks really good, right? I mean, obviously, this shot looks amazing, right? It's super well animated in terms of, you know, what's actually on display. The hair moving, right? The cape moving, right? All that stuff looks really, really good. The interesting thing about that scene, I will say, is that they show a lot more of the transformation in the anime, right? So obviously, clearly the beginning is based off of that part, right? But they have this shot from the back of him. Obviously, Beerus cuts in, and then they actually show the shot of Super Saiyan Hercule. So I think that's kind of interesting that they cut it a little bit differently, right? Obviously, to kind of remove some of Beerus's stuff, even though Beerus is in there, right? Because obviously later on, right, after the support memory plays, and it has, well, not after it plays, but during when it plays, and obviously the Super Saiyan, you know, is first shown, they have this shot of, like, the anime, like, edited, like, you know, when they try and make a, you know, a scene more, like, intense by, like, repeating the scene over and over. They have Hercule, obviously, holding Beerus over his head, and with this scene, right, it's kind of interesting, because they do have his hair move a little bit, but they don't have the cape move, which is interesting, excuse me, and Beerus obviously is just stood still. But the interesting thing about this is that that also doesn't happen until later, right? You obviously have Hercule, like, go like, ha, ha, you know, make a couple poses. By the way, I'm doing this in this way to avoid being hit by the hammers of whatever YouTube deity wants to decimate me for copyright today. So apologies that we're kind of like skipping through it and not just watching through it, because obviously it's a little bit different when you have the videos for the side-by-side. But obviously I'm just trying to give you the picture, right? So obviously Hercule's talking to the crowd more. You then cut to the scene of Roshi. But then the interesting thing is it cuts back to Hercule, and you have this whole fight scene, right? Where Hercule, like, you know, dashes in, and then obviously he throws Beerus, right? Obviously gives him the work, throws in a couple of punches here, right? Obviously some JoJo style punches, basically, right? Obviously then, you know, some more battling ensues, you know, throw in a couple more punches, and then, right, it isn't until the very end when Hercule's still telling the story that this particular shot of Hercule lifting Beerus above his head actually appears, right? Which is basically like bar for bar the Dokkan version where they do the, you know? So it is kind of interesting, right, that they decided to skip basically everything in the middle. They go right from his transformation to him having it above his head, right? And I think that that works really well for a support memory, right? Because obviously the whole point of the support memory is supposed to be, right, something that's short, sweet, to the point, and obviously it's there as a little animation before you actually start, right, your actual run of whatever you're playing. So I think obviously cutting out all of that middle context, or just content maybe would be the more apt word in this case, I think works for, you know, making this into a support memory. However, it does give me hope as to this guy potentially actually getting a unit, because obviously, right, as we saw from the transformation right here, there is so much that happens in between, like Hercule, you know, obviously posing up, right? You then have them do the actual, like, quote unquote fight, right, where all of these different punches and, you know, all the funny shenanigans happen for this, right? You could easily make all of that stuff in between these two scenes into another super attack, right? 100%. And it is kind of a shame, because I think if they do make this guy, right, obviously then it's like, well, the Super Saiyan transformation scene could have definitely been like an intro animation, which would have been really cool, and then obviously have him actually fighting Beerus. But, right, with that being said, since they decided to make this into support memory, it still gives me a little hope that maybe he'll just get a super attack as an actual unit someday in the game, because there's still all that content to make. And it's so funny too, there's all that from just this 1 minute clip, right? This whole scene in Dragon Ball Super is only like a minute long, which is really funny. But yeah, obviously then after he holds Beerus above his head, right, it then cuts back to him basically like being all smug and talking to the camera, right, before you obviously have him then shout, and basically then the support memory is over, right? And it's interesting once again because obviously, right, like for this particular scene in the anime, that is like almost not even close to what happens, kinda, right? Because obviously he does the whole thing of like, oh, I threw him down, right? And he's describing to the people. But to be fair, this shot is very similar to, you know, this one, right? Where he has his hand up like this, right? So I suppose that that works, or rather that's kind of what they were going for. Rather, I was going to say it actually does work because obviously even though it's a little bit different from the anime, I think it gets the point across as to, you know, obviously what they're trying to portray in the support memory. So I think that not only is this just in terms of like outside of the fact that, you know, we didn't end up getting a Hercule unit, right, as Super Saiyan Hercule, I think that this support memory is good in the function of a support memory because it kind of ticks all the boxes for me in terms of like, you know, being quick and easy, right? It introduces the scene, it has a conclusion, it has some pretty decent animation all throughout, right? It's nothing too crazy, but it's definitely pretty good, right? And adapting the anime in a way that is a little bit different, right, from the source material, but adapting it in a way that works for Dokkan. And not to mention, obviously, also we talk about a lot in these videos, keeping it so that the focus is kind of on the vertical video, because obviously, you know, you want to be focusing on the fact that this is a mobile game, right? So of course they don't have the luxury of using the horizontal. Well, I mean, obviously the Dokkan could just be a horizontal game, I guess, but you understand excuse me, what I'm trying to say is that obviously because Dokkan is a vertical game, right, they do a good job of kind of focusing in these scenes for that aspect ratio. But I think that the thing about this whole support memory that does give me quite a bit of hope for the future and potential to actually get one is the fact that there is so much stuff that was left unused from the Super Saiyan Hercule quote-unquote fight, right? Because I don't even know if you could really call it a fight. But I do hope that that means that someday we do actually get a unit, right? Definitely could be copium. I will be the first to tell you that, right? It could absolutely be a whole lot of copium in the fact that, you know, I'm just still hoping and praying that they actually make this guy into a unit so I actually can play as him, because obviously that's the whole point. Like, that's what I want, right? But, you know, even though, right, we didn't end up getting a unit, and I still do hope that they do make one with the stuff that, you know, obviously is still left, it is cool that they at least gave us something, right, to have him be represented in the game, and at least you will still be able to see him when you're using the support memory, because the support memory is actually quite good, funny enough. So it's actually usable, which is pretty nice. I just kind of feel like it has been a little bit of a trend recently where Dokkan likes to basically give us support memories instead of free characters in some instances, and I think that personally that is just like, I don't want to say unacceptable because I feel like that's a little bit overzealous to say, but I think just very disappointing, and definitely how things should not be, I think, is maybe just a better way to put it, because obviously a support memory does not equate to, I should say, a full playable character, you know. Either way, though, let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. I'd be very curious to hear what you all have to say about the support memory and what you think about the whole Super Saiyan Hercule situation. With all of that being said, though, don't forget to like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video, and I will catch you in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.